Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I'm David Rodriguez, and today we're going to be reviewing Tiny Epic Dungeons and its expansion, Stories. So these were both published in 2022 from Gameland Games and were designed by Scott Almes. Now, because this is a high fantasy dungeon crawler, I'm going to take you over to one of our high fantasy experts to tell you all about the theme. Bork, 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 bork. Take it away.
You're an idiot. You know my name is Orc Lord.
Whatever. What can you tell me about Tiny Epic Dungeons?
I can't believe you're making me play this. Do you know how traumatizing it is to be in a tiny epic dungeon? Are we crawling along and your stomach and your back and everything scraping against the floor and the ceiling and the sides? And then the snot gnomes come.
The what?
They use snot to power their spells. And when you're stuck, they come to harvest it with these long, thin spoons that you feel like they're scraping your brain. Oh God. Oh, the spoons. The spoons!
Okay, I think we're just going to leave him be for a little while. I'll tell you about the theme. So Tiny Epic Dungeons, like I said, it's a high fantasy dungeon crawler. You and your party of adventurers are going to go deep into a dungeon, fight off monsters, especially goblins, to try eventually to get rid of a big evil boss monster. But the entire time, your torch is slowly dwindling out. If your torch goes out when you're in there, you're surely doomed. So this begs the question, can you get in and defeat the monster before either you're destroyed yourself or your torch burns out? Let's go to our gameplay overview so you can get a better idea of how Tiny Epic Dungeons plays. I hope that interview was at least as helpful and informative as any of my other interviews are. So let's tell you all about Tiny Epic Dungeons, starting with a gameplay overview. So when you start out, you're going to make your dungeon tile deck, which has a varying number of dungeon rooms depending on the number of players you have. You're going to have a certain number of minions in there, which are sort of tougher baddies. You're also going to have a card in there that is going to be your lair entrance. This is how you get to the big bad boss at the end. If you're playing with a Stories expansion, you may have a little bit different setup, just kind of depending on which mode of that you're doing. You're going to pick your characters. We kind of recommend you go with 4. Don't try to do... you can play with like 2 or 3, but I think in order to manage like the goblins and all that, I think it's better to have more characters. And it's not too hard to manage multiple characters in this game, I don't think. So pick your characters. They have a life meter and they have a focus meter. Focus will let them carry out certain actions during the game. You're going to pick your model and you're going to put it in the entrance room of the dungeon. Around that, you're going to have 4 face-down dungeon tiles. And as you explore, you're going to flip those over when your character walks into those rooms. And you can rotate it however you need to, so that way the corridors match up. You also have a special ability where you can basically reveal any dungeon tile around you if you pay like 2 focus to do it, I think. Or no, it's not 2 focus. If you move the torch down the track. Do you want to tell them about that torch track?
Sure. So, first I'm going to apologize. I'm recovering from a cold, so I feel okay, but my voice sounds terrible. So, with the torch track, it goes down after each player takes a turn. And sometimes it'll go down a tile and nothing will happen. Other times it'll spawn a goblin. Another time all the enemies may attack. And there's some other things that may make the track go down. There's only a couple things that can make the track go up. One of them is defeating one of the minions that are out on the board.
Yeah, and as far as like when those come out, as well as another way the goblins can come out, sometimes you'll enter a room and it'll have an icon for either a goblin or a minion, and at that point it'll immediately do some damage to whatever character walked in there because you've been ambushed by them. And then you're basically going to put the meeple for either one of the goblins or the appropriate monster on that spot, and you're going to flip over a minion or goblin card and that'll tell you which one is there. Managing goblins is really important. One of the ways you can lose is if you have 4 goblins in there and then you have to spawn another one, that'll cause you to be basically overrun by them. So you have to make sure you manage those guys. They don't take a lot to kill, but they can be kind of a pain in the rear. And as far as dealing with the minions, especially if you're dealing with the base game, you can't go into the big boss's lair until you've taken out all the minions in the dungeon. So you do have to find them, but they are especially nasty and can do pretty heavy attacks and can take a lot more damage than those goblins can take. As you go through the dungeon and defeat things and whatnot, you will be getting items which you can add to your character, as well as spells. There are sets of different kinds of items, so if you get the entire set like of the Panther, it'll give you a bigger and bigger bonus as you go on. It's a little hard to do that, though, because the deck is sort of randomized, so hard to get that full set. I don't think we've even come close to that so far.
Yeah, I think we've gotten 2, maybe 3 of the items.
Yeah, I think that's about it. So the other kind of room that you can end up going into or discovering is a trap room. Do you want to tell them about those?
Yeah. So when you flip over a room that has a trap in it, you go into there and you have to roll a skill test to see if you can get past the trap or not. And that card will tell you which skill you're going to be rolling for. Sometimes it's a spell, sometimes it's agility. There might be strength, I don't remember strength 1, but it's normally spells or agility. And if you fail the test, then you take some physical damage. If you pass the test, then you can keep moving on. There's also ways to disarm the trap. And if you do that, then you and your fellow explorers don't have to worry about dealing with that trap anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty handy. And you usually get some kind of a reward for doing that as well. So it's a good thing to do in all kinds of ways. Once you've gotten to a point where you have defeated all the minions and have found the lair dungeon tile, you can go on and fight the boss. Every boss is somewhat different. They have a lot of health. They have their own little special like lair room. And usually in order to defeat them, you're going to need to draw them out into the dungeon and get these certain altar markers or get the boss into a room with a certain altar marker. Otherwise, you can only hurt them up to a certain point. So you needed to get them to do that. Different bosses will have a different number of those that you need to get. It's kind of tricky. The goblins will keep spawning during that time. So it's just it's a more complicated situation to deal with. Hopefully by that point you've built up enough items and spells that you can actually handle the fight. If you have the stories expansion, or if you're looking at possibly getting that, what that adds is it has a deck of story cards, which you can use 1 or 2 depending on the difficulty you want to have. And those will tell you something else that you have to accomplish before either dealing with the boss monster, or if you're playing the other module from that expansion, going on to the next layer or next level of the multi-level dungeon that you're doing. You'll have to defeat or accomplish those goals as well. And there's a pretty good stack of them. Other than that, that expansion just adds some monsters, some items, more goblins, and more heroes and bosses as well.
I really enjoy the artwork in this game. It's very high fantasy. Some of the characters are kind of shadowed in, so it's hard to see like details of their faces and whatnot, but it's just kind of the aesthetic that they did. And a lot of times it's for like the class, like the thieves are kind of darkened out and so.
Yeah, they've got a very cool look for them. I don't mind the shout-out people. Yeah, you definitely can't see their faces too great, though, if that's what you want to do. The look of these characters is very, very World of Warcraft. I mean, it looks almost like they ripped them right out of that game in some cases. So the elves are very much like the World of Warcraft elves. And the armored humans, some of them are just, yeah, it's super World of Warcraft. But that's a cool looking aesthetic. I like it, so I don't have any complaints about that. One thing they did that you might have been aware of if you were following the Kickstarter campaign is initially when they'd released the box art, one of the women was on the cover, and I don't even remember what the situation was. If she had like if she was very scantily clad, or the position that she was in, or combination of those things. Either way, enough people complained about that they actually fixed that in the game, which is great. And there's nothing too egregious as far as like sexualizing the art, but I mean, you can probably tell me what you think.
Some of them are a little bit more risque than like I would prefer, but I don't think they're so over the top. I think that they did tone it back. So they probably could have toned it down a little bit more, but they did definitely tone it down some from the original direction they were going.
Yeah, it's not like they're all in like sexy poses and stuff like that, and you know, chainmail bikinis or anything too crazy, but there's some people that aren't wearing like tons of stuff, I would say. One thing that they have going on is there are a lot of icons in this game. Like there's a whole like fold out back page reference thing of the rules. I think it might even be double-sided. There's a lot of freaking icons in this game, and some of them are printed very small, which I mean, it's a tiny epic game, so they're trying to cram a lot in there. And some of them, if my vision was just a little bit worse, I'm not sure how well I'd be able to really make those out, especially the ones where you're trying to see what like the range situation is. If it's just like straight line of sight, or some of the spells can go like around corners. It's a little hard to see those. And because things get kind of cramped together, it can be kind of hard to tell like which icons are supposed to go with which other icons and in what order. Like it's just a little confusing. And I think it's going to take a long time to get a handle on what some of those icons really mean. Some of the spells especially, I only knew or could figure out what they did because I'm familiar enough with like similar ideas from like Dungeons and Dragons that I kind of know what they are. Like the Chain Lightning spell from the icons didn't make any sense to me, but I kind of get what Chain Lightning's supposed to be about. Mm-hmm. So we figured out what I think it's supposed to do. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we got that figured out.
Yeah, I think this is definitely not a game for beginners. With how many icons there are, it kind of needs some more gamer knowledge to tackle some of the icons in this game.
I think if you play it often enough and regularly, you'll probably get to the point where they just click. But it's going to take some time, and some of the ones that you don't see as much, you might still have to probably look up from time to time. So that's kind of a thing. But other than that, overall art, I can't really complain about. I think they did a good job. All right, for components, I have mostly positive things to say, and the things I would ding it on are things that you just couldn't have really done in a tiny epic game. I really wish the player boards were like the double layer cardboard, so that there'd be like little niches that you can fit your trackers in for your health and your focus, because it's really easy for those to slide around, and that's kind of a pain. You know, the dungeon tile, actually pretty much all the cards are getting a little bendy, pretty visibly, even after, like, I think after one shuffle, they were pretty bendy. So, I mean, if you shuffle in a gentler way, that may not be a problem for you. But either way, it is what it is. But the cards are nice linen finish. I mean, they're good quality card, but I mean, it is just card you're dealing with. You're not opening up Gloomhaven and pulling out, big cardboard tiles. You'd have like 3 rooms in this game if they tried to fit that in a tiny epic box. There's a lot of wood in this game, though. Most of the tokens are wood, from your health and focus to the rather big ones for the traps when you've disarmed those. The monsters are all pretty cool wooden meeples that have a drawing of them sort of printed on there. And the thing that really surprised me this game has is miniatures, which haven't really been in a tiny epic game before. And the miniatures are pretty cool. I mean, the plastic's a little soft, but not too bad. One thing worth noting, though, if you're thinking you'd get this, and if you didn't like the game, you could just use the models for Dungeons and Dragons, is I'm pretty sure these are to a smaller scale than the D&D ones. You know, I had like an orc barbarian or something like that. I don't remember exactly his deal, but he was a big guy, but he wasn't a big guy. He was,
more like a halfling.
Yeah, he would have been he'd be the runt of the litter for sure if you played him in a D&D game. So just so you know, they're a little bit smaller, not ridiculously so, but if you're really sticking next to other models, if that's what you wanted to do, they're going to come off as being a little petite compared to the other ones. But yeah, other than that, I'm pretty positive on the components.
Yeah. Yeah, for a tiny epic game, I'm really impressed with the components of this game. There's some things that, it would be nice if if the cards were a little bit bigger, so it was easier to see those icons, or there could be more writing on the cards, so the icons made a little bit more sense. But, again, it wouldn't be a tiny epic game. So I'm really impressed with how much is in these boxes, even for a tiny epic game. I know tiny epics normally have a lot of components to them, but I feel like they kind of outdid themselves with this game, especially with all the wood pieces and the models and stuff. I think they did a good job of incorporating the theme. It does feel like a dungeon crawl. I actually really appreciate the theme of the torch going out on us, and that being kind of your tracker for time. You do have that pressure of the goblins swarming after you and having to keep those at bay while you're dealing with everything else that you have to deal with in the dungeon. So I think they did a good job of incorporating the theme into this game.
Yeah, I do agree. It does it really holds that theme of a dungeon crawl, and I also really like that the goblins are always a threat that they might overwhelm you. I like to think of goblins always sneaking out of like between every possible little crack and crevice in a place. So you really have to watch out for those little guys. They're not tough, but you don't want them to get numbers up because then it's too big a problem to handle. So that's cool. I do like the torch thing. It makes sense that these dungeons probably don't have a lot of like fluorescent lighting going on in there, so you need to have some kind of a torch in there, and it would be bad if it sputtered out. I do think it's weird how sometimes you can get that torch marker to go back up the track. You know, like, why is my torch getting brighter when I defeat a minion?
You stole their torch.
You stole their... that, you know, maybe... I don't know. Why does the ooze have a torch? Why did
you use the ooze.
You use the ooze, because it's flammable ooze.
Yes.
All right, fine. So for the ooze and the fire elemental, I'm okay with this. Does the skeleton need a torch? I don't know. It seems kind of strange to me, but... it's fine. They have to do something to make that track come back up for sure. So I'm not going to complain about that too much. It's just a little weird, but sure.
Maybe he had a torch when he went in there and didn't use it. That's why he's a skeleton now.
So he had time to die with his torch.
Yep.
Completely decay to the point where he has a skeleton or be picked over by scavengers. His torch is still brighter than ours, and we've been in this thing for 15 minutes.
He didn't use it. He was dumb.
He didn't use the torch. Is that...
or he stole it from another explorer.
So my point is, the torch thing doesn't make sense as far as getting it to go bright again. And that's all I'm going to say about that. God. All right, so final thoughts on this game. The first thing I gotta say is this game is really hard. It's hard. The first couple games we were playing a rule wrong, and we didn't realize that when you defeat a minion, the torch could go back up the track. It's because that thing is two-sided. On one side, it doesn't actually have the reminder, and I think that's what we were playing with first. So that didn't help. And that makes it impossible. Don't play like that. That's not hard mode. That's you hate yourself mode. But even when you don't do that, the game is quite difficult. Dealing with all the minions is difficult. It's usually not too hard to deal with the goblins, but it can be. We've had the luck where it hasn't bitten us too bad, I don't think, but...
No, I think we lost one.
Did we lose one? No, maybe we did. But yeah, it can happen kind of quick, especially when minions and other things start popping up too, because it's like, oh, you want to kill those, but you can't ignore those little guys. That torch runs out faster than you think it will, because again, if you decide, well, I'm going to deal with the goblins then, and those minions pop out, suddenly you have a lot on your hands to do and not a lot of time to do it. So,
and one of the minions spawns goblins too.
Yes.
That's the one that got us.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, you're right. That's what it was. Brutal. The other thing that can kind of end your game is if you, because of how your tiles have come out and how you've laid them or rotated them or what have you, you can no longer get to the room tile you need in order to proceed. So like if you made it so you can possibly find the lair door, because not all the rooms have corridors in every direction, that could be a problem. If you're playing with the stories expansion, like we were, and you had to go to like the corner and then bring something back to a different tile, but you've made it to the point where there can no longer be corners, then you just lose. And the thing is that we like hard games. Some of our very favorite cooperative games are really dang difficult. We've played them many, 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 many times and only won a single time, and then by the skin of our teeth. So difficult games aren't really a problem for us, but I feel like the way this is difficult bothers me on some level. Like I feel like sometimes it's almost predetermined that you're gonna fail. You know, if you go out and you explore and you make it so that you can't get to the rooms you need to, because like that's just the cards you happen to pull out, and unfortunately that's just how it worked out for you, that sucks. It feels really cruddy at the end. So I don't dig that very much. You know, to be honest, we never got to the final boss fight ever. And it's like I'm reluctant to come and review it not having done it, but I find the difficulty of this aggravating to the point where I don't want to keep pressing on. Like, we know what you have to do for the boss. We understand how that would play out. That's fine. But I'm kind of like I don't feel any drive to keep trying. Now, this sounds like I hate the game, and I don't. I think a lot of people actually will really like this game, and I've seen that a lot of people do. And I think if those things I mentioned don't bother you, then great. But it takes when I think of a dungeon crawler, and this is part of my just preconceived notions, like I either think of you're going in, you're just having crazy dice rolling fun, and you're slaughtering monsters, or maybe they're slaughtering you or whatever, and that's all fine. And that's kind of all I thought dungeon crawlers were for a while. And then we played Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, and that's almost the other end of the spectrum. It's still a dungeon crawler, but it's almost all based on what you decide to do, whether or not you win or lose. There's a little randomness, but not that much. And this one feels like it tried to take, that being really efficient idea and really taking care with every step that you have in Gloomhaven, but then combined it with dice rolling and randomness from another type of dungeon crawler. And the two together just end up kind of frustrating me. So I'd happily play this game if someone wanted to. If you want to play this game, that's fine. I'm not going to hate playing it or be oh, it's the worst. It's not. It's got a lot of things that I do enjoy as I'm playing, but am I going to personally pick it off the shelf? Probably not. It's just I'm done kind of beating my head against that wall. There's prettier walls I could beat my head against. Prettier? More fun walls? There's different walls that I'd rather beat my head against. Let's just leave it at that. So, with that being said, I'm going to give it a 6. I do think it is above average game. There are some definite high points that invoke in me a feeling of more than just eh. But overall, it's not one that I'm going to go back to, and it's not one that I'm going to completely avoid. It's just a 6 for me.
So, we were playing that torch rule wrong the first time we played through it, so it made the game incredibly difficult and kind of left a bad taste in our mouth. And we were talking about it afterwards, and we were almost struggling to want to play it again so that we could actually review it. And I kept going back to that track and being there's something there that doesn't seem right. It felt either it seems it instead of being after every character, it should be after every round, or there's got to be something. That track just went way too fast. And so then when we were looking at it again, we realized what we did wrong, and so we played again to correct that. And it still kind of feels like we're playing something wrong, and I don't think we actually are, but it has that feel to it. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like I have a difficult time giving this game a score, because while we're playing it, I'm actually having a lot of fun with this game. But then it has that sudden cutoff of we lost the game. And there's not a buildup of I think we're gonna lose. It's just, or it's just all of a sudden, nope, we're done. And and it doesn't feel like a game that a lot of difficult games that we have that we enjoy playing. We feel like we can learn every time we play the game when we lose. I don't really feel that with this game because of how random everything is. The tiles are random, the rolls are random, the monsters that you get are different each time. So there might be a little bit that you can learn from each gameplay that you do, but it doesn't feel like it's enough to overcome the lost conditions of this game. And so even though I'm having fun during the game and playing the game, that sudden end of game status where it just all of a sudden, okay, nope, it's done, we lost, just really drops that fun level off dramatically. So because I do have fun while I'm playing the game, I'm going to give it a 7. I wish I could get, I actually really, really enjoy it while I'm playing it. So I wish I could give it a higher score, But the fact that we've played it so many times and we haven't even gotten to the boss, it just, there's so many lose conditions that just end the game abruptly, in my opinion, that it really drops that score down for me, so.
Yeah, I really wish, or I hope I see in the future they'll come up with some kind of weird, like, alternate win-loss conditions. I think I'd like to see that, because I think... I just think it's necessary. I just think you're real right. It can just suddenly smack you in the head, and it's just like it's over. And that's it. And it doesn't feel good. Again, I see a lot of people online who are liking it, so there's that. Maybe that will bother you, but if the things we said sound terrible to you, then it might be one that you want to look the other way on. So our scores were again a 6 and a 7. So not awful scores by any stretch, but not glowing either, I'd say. So if this video has been helpful for you, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time we put out a video. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all around the table again at All Games New and Old.
Bye.
Bye. For face down. It looks real World of Warcraft a lot, which is fine. I mean, like the elves look super like the I don't remember anymore. Whatever, one of those elves, and I don't know. It's been a long time. Purpley elves, you know what I mean? It looks like those guys. Maybe, I don't remember. It's been forever. Not the blood elves. Those are different. But that was what they were called. World of Warcraft. We're getting sidetracked. World of Warcraft. Now there's a plane going overhead. I should be talking right now about this game. But can you hear that? We live near a little airport. Very annoying. It's getting worse. Is it going to land on my house? I don't know. Sounds like it. Ridiculous. Let's go to our gameplay. Yeah. Okay. Alright, if you liked that video, you have impeccable taste. And you might like this video.
Or this one.
Either way, if you want to see more, please hit this button to subscribe.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.